Dear friend, this is a bonus episode as we're focusing on conference season this week. I have the huge honour of speaking at the upcoming IRM Business Analysis Conference Europe in September with my good friend Grant Wright. We've been putting the finishing touches to our talk, which I have to say is probably the most ambitious talk we've ever delivered together. I don't want to spoil it, but the two of us are going head to head in the boxing ring, and the talk's titled Collaboration Mania. We'll each be championing whether virtual is better than face-to-face collaboration, and we've prepared videos, ring walks, and actual boxing commentators announcing our entrances. We're even dressing up for the occasion. So if you are interested in finding out more, check out the link in the show notes for details on how you can attend the conference, as I would love to see you there. Now, two other awesome speakers that will be presenting at the same conference are Nicola Pinkney and Paul Haywood, who will be presenting their talk titled Communication is a Science. I caught up with the two of them as they're preparing for their amazing talk, so I hope you enjoy this conversation.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Danda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. So this particular episode is really a pre-look at your talk that you're delivering at an upcoming conference that I'm also speaking at. So I thought it'd be great to get to know some of the speakers and also just understand a bit more about the specialism and the topic that you're going to be speaking about. So Nick, before we delve into things, what superpower are you guys bringing to this particular episode?
So I think the superpower that we're bringing to the episode is we have a fantastic understanding of neurodiversity. Both myself and Paul are diagnosed. I'm diagnosed ADHD, so are you, Paul, and we're looking at how communication can be impacted and how people's different worldviews are impacted. So, for example, myself and Paul have got ADHD, which means our worldview is going to be completely different to somebody who doesn't have ADHD, and how that can impact your sort of day-to-day online communications, face-to-face communications. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to build on that anymore, Paul.
No, absolutely. And I think what comes with that are there's lots of hidden. So for somebody who understands the world in one certain way, observing or communicating with somebody else who observes it in a different way, we're all different, but especially if they have neurodiverse conditions, there could be hidden influences or impacts on their day-to-day or what they're experiencing that you may not see or hear or feel or sense.
Yeah, and how to gauge a little bit more of an understanding about the person that you're speaking to and just being mindful of the words that you're using.
Oh, brilliant. And I have to say, this is a grey area for me. I think I mentioned it to you guys just before we kicked off as well. I do a lot of public speaking, but I rarely think intentionally about the diversity of the audience, if I'm honest. And that's a big flaw on my part. So I think this is an invaluable topic to shed some light on, because every day we attend meetings, we often speak to stakeholders in our daily work, and wouldn't it be great if we understood things from their perspective better? And I think that's great to talk about. So before we, again, jump into the topic, Nick, tell me about your background. So I guess you're a BA.
So it's quite a funny story, to be honest. I've been a BA for 5 years now, but I'm not going to lie, I didn't know what a business analyst was. So I took a gap year out of school, after school, and applied to be a project manager. I know. Boo.
I'm only joking. We're all one team.
But I didn't actually. I applied to be a project manager and a quantity surveyor at Yorkshire Water, and was I think I was second running. I was about a point short. And they said, based on my personality, they thought I would be a good business analyst. So here I am 5 years later. I did an apprenticeship at Yorkshire Water for 2 years. And now I'm a senior BA at Evri. So yeah, short but sweet. It's been a good ride.
Nice. I have loads of parcels that need collecting, so I'll let you know. Lots of Amazon stuff over here. No, just kidding. And Paul, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I started in customer service in the Great British Gas, and then I got an opportunity to go to India to play with some projects and support them out there. And that was my first experience with business analysis, because little did I know the work that I was doing was very BA aligned. And someone made the recommendation that I apply for the position. I went for it, and I've actually lost track of how many years. I'm going to say 8, but it's probably more like 9 now. I've lost track. I'm now a lead BA at Hiscox, and yeah, absolutely loving the position, loving the career. Just touching on what Nick says about her personality, and she should be a great BA. I'm very much a believer that it's a mindset the BA is. You've got to have a way of looking, or that way of thinking, because we're forever challenging. Looking back at my history, that was always there. I was always getting in trouble for questioning, why do we do that? When a trainer sat there following a training, the last thing they want to be doing is having someone go, but why? So little did I know, I was a born and bred BA, but it took a while to get here. But yeah, got exposure to some projects, and now I'm here. Happy days.
Oh, brilliant. And I'm grateful that you are. So, Paul, in terms of your experience at presenting and public speaking at conferences, is this your first conference? And could you just tell me a little bit about why you do it? Because look, it's not easy, right? So why do you put yourself through this hell?
So it'll be my third or fourth conference.
Third, I think.
Third, I think it is now. But it's not the first time or third time I'll be speaking in front of a crowd. And I think as BAs, we've always got a wide audience when we communicate. And why am I doing it? Jump out of my fears. There's a message, and I think like with all workshops or presentations, whether it's there's something that needs to be talked about, something that needs to be spoken about. And whether it's someone leading to get more information or whether it's someone leading to provide more information, it's a service. And what I see is the work that we're doing with the neurodiversity, it's like I say, it's a grey area, but it's also got a lot of attention at the moment. But there's a lot of people not knowing much about that. We've experienced and we've lived this, and it's something that's a big passion for us because it's part of our lives. It's part of everyone's lives. We've been impacted by this, and we're in a position where we feel that we can tell people and help over somebody else. And if we're just helping one person, that entire workshop, that entire conference, then that's a win for us, because that one person's come away from this going, actually, I've just discovered this, or that's just helped me. And as scary or as fearful as they are, I just think back to one presentation I did, same talk and what we were talking about and subject. And someone came up to me even literally last week and says, I'm really glad that you did that with us, because that's helped me massively at home with my family and understanding my kids. And it's the little things that make it absolutely worth it. So no matter how scary or terrifying it is, or how much hard work you have to put into, because you don't just wake up in the morning and go to a conference. Sometimes you do. But yeah, there's generally a bit of prep. Well, there's always a bit of prep beforehand, but it's those little wins, those little stars at the end that go, that was worth it. And yeah, it really touches home. And whether it's something personal like this, or whether you're just providing information or an experience or information, or just trying to get something from the audience, if you've helped somebody, at least one person, then you've made an impact, you've done something good.
I love that because there's some real purpose there. It's not just about, I want to get more followers on LinkedIn. Like, there is a true purpose there. And Nick, what is the most difficult thing that you find when you're preparing for a public speaking talk like this? What's a big challenge that you've had to overcome?
I think this is the third time we're presenting together, Paul. And if you ask him, I am a mess before. Like, I just don't eat all day and cry the night before. But I think the most difficult part of it for me personally is thinking about how I'm going to be perceived. Because if you're talking about such a personal subject, you've got to be aware that everybody in the audience is going to have a different take on it. They're all going to have their own personalities that they're going to pull from it. And I think that's why we're focusing on communication so much this year, because it's a really scary thing to think that you could have an impact on somebody's life, whether that be in a positive way or in a negative way, or somebody turns away from your talk and goes, actually, yeah, that's really difficult. And I think that's why we always put a caveat on, just to say, if you need to step outside, if anything hits home too much, that's absolutely fine. But for me, that's what makes it really difficult. But it's also really rewarding at the same time. But yeah, no, if you ask Paul, I'm a mess before.
How do you calm the nerves? Because I see a lot of people in that boat, like me included. We're all human beings, and I think part of it is the pressure we put on ourselves, because we're proud of what we do and what we want to put out in the world. And if we didn't care, we would probably just turn up and not care, right? And
exactly, yeah.
It would be a lot easier, but because we've got our internal standards, and then we appreciate people have paid to come to these events, so we want to make sure they have a great experience. Like, how do you deal with those nerves, Nick?
I think it's just, I'm not going to lie, it's a push through it and see what happens. I think you've just got to trust in yourself that you know what you're talking about. You've done the research, that you've been chosen to do this, chosen to speak for this very reason. So you've just got to trust that you are where you are because you're good, and not let the imposter syndrome take over. And all else fails, earphones and music and dance in a quiet place normally helps to shake the adrenaline out.
And Paul, I love the fact that you guys are presenting together as a pair. As I often present with my partner in visual crime, Mr. Grant Wright, and I always find it's a completely different dynamic when you present with someone else versus presenting alone. Again, like, what are some of the nuances that you find presenting with Nick? And again, like, why do you do it? Why don't you present individually, separately?
I think so. For the neurodiversity piece, this is something we've experienced together. It's something we've experienced and spoken about, and really helped each other through a lot as well. And it was only natural that we did the talk together. But also as well, I think it helped encourage us. We were both talking about something very personal and very scary as well. So it helped us get through that. And I think it would feel odd not doing it with Nick now, because we're still growing, we're still understanding, we're still learning, and we are still helping each other through that. It's not just, I've learned about this now, everything's easy. Life is still hard. Life is still is difficult, and putting that washing on is still a pain. And it's not just because we forget, but because of the difficulties that we have in the day-to-day. Why don't I do it on my own? Now, there are talks and how does it differ? I think, and that's the other thing as well, it's different when you do it on your own. There's always that, on your own, you're more isolated, I think, as a speaker and as a presenter. You're putting on the show, and you are the show. Your content is the show. And you have to work with the audience a lot to get that feeling of back and forth. Whereas when you've got a partner in crime, you've got someone who you've worked through the presentation with, you spoke about, you've aligned how you're going to bounce off each other and make the giggles and stuff like that. And it becomes more natural and flowing, and that connection to the audience doesn't need to be there because they're connecting with you, with your dynamic, instead of having to build one with the audience. So I think it's easier per se in that respect, because you don't have to build that relationship, but you do have to then show. So that's why I think how it differs a little bit. So depending on the talk, so I do a lot with AI, and I'm thinking of doing a presentation around AI later down the line. That would be very much probably myself, and I'll be demonstrating and doing that show, whereas this is very personal, about us, about our experiences, about communication. So it's allowing the audience to connect with us and our dynamic, if that makes sense, I think.
Yeah, no, I absolutely resonate with a lot of what you've just said there. It sometimes takes the pressure off you as an individual a little bit, because it gives you some breathing space, and you can complement each other's strengths as well. So that's awesome. And so, Nick, let's talk about the upcoming talk that you guys are going to be presenting at the IRM BA European Conference. What's the title? And just for anyone who is thinking about attending the conference, like, give us a little taster of what they can expect in terms of the sort of the high level summary of the talk.
Without giving too much away, I think we've touched on it a little bit already, but the talk is called Communication is a Science. And the basic premise of it is looking at communication as a science, funnily enough. So it's looking at what different types of communication there are. So you've got your physical, you've got your verbal, you've got non-verbal communication, facial expressions, and how you choose to present yourself as well. And it's looking at how everybody's worldviews are different. So we're going to tie it into a little bit of business analysis at that point, looking at different tools and looking at how you can present yourself and how you can take information back from somebody else as well, and tying it all into a really nice, neat little package with some top tips at the end.
Ooh, love that. Love top tips. And for me, communication is super important. With the ethos of the podcast, I'm a big advocate of human skills for the future. And people often talk about, well, what are the careers and skills that are going to continue regardless of what happens with AI and automation and all the rest of it? And I hope communication is one of those, because as long as there are people, we'll need to communicate.
Absolutely. And I think AI is fantastic, and Paul is a massive advocate of it, but it will have a tough time understanding the human brain and being able to identify the differences in it. So one thing I missed is that we're going to touch on how being neurodivergent can impact on communication styles and how you interpret information as well. And I think that AI would struggle because AI won't have a neurodivergent condition unless you program it to, of course.
And Paul, neurodiversity, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but I don't think many of us truly understand what it is. So for the layperson out there, could you give us a quick summary of what does it mean? And also tell us more about ADHD, because again, these terms, they mean different things to different people. And unless you've been diagnosed, like, you understand the ins and outs of it. But someone like me goes by what I've heard from people in a flippant comment here or there. So just tell us a bit more about them.
Absolutely. And this might sound very familiar if anyone watched our first presentation. So neurodiversity is just differences in the brain. Everyone's brain's different. Even if you're identical twins, you're not going to have the same brain. You're still going to have different thoughts and different feelings. So neurodiversity is the differences in the brain. Now, when you have different traits, so for example, like your attention or executive functions and stuff like this, or sensitivity to light, everyone's got scales. So no one's just on or off. No one just has empathy or strong empathy. It's always a varying scale, and this happens for all kind of traits and features of the brain and feelings and thoughts. When we talk about neurodiversity conditions, we're talking about those who are on the extreme sides of that scale. So, for example, ADHD, you got extreme kind of hyperactivity, dopamine deficiency. You don't have to have hyperactivity in terms of physical sense. So it could be more of a mental sense. So I could be sat here perfectly fine, and inside my brain, I've got 4 songs going off, 9 different thoughts. It's like a bunch of squirrels running around up there, all fighting for the big old pile of nuts in the middle. And that's probably the best way to describe it. So when we talk about neurodiversity, we are talking about extremes of those scales, and there's those different conditions. You got autism, ADHD, Asperger's, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, even PTSD. You've got Down syndrome. All these different just extremes of a mental scale, and it's caused from a variety of changes in when you're growing up and when you're developing as a child, and even in the womb and genetics. And there's a whole science behind it, and it's absolutely worth looking into, because it's not something that's just, it doesn't exist. It does exist, and it is real. It's scientifically proven. They've seen the differences between a neurodiverse and a neurotypical brain. A neurotypical is just the one who's more average, so they're more in the constant spectrum of that scale. But anybody can experience these. So when you hear people saying, "Oh yeah, I sometimes do that." Absolutely, you absolutely sometimes do that. The difference is people who struggle with ADHD or with these neurodiverse conditions, they always do that, or near always do that. And it's a more consistent and an extreme approach to it. So hopefully that's given neurodiversity some justice in terms of what it is. So what like I say, what is it like to have ADHD? Well, I've answered the question twice now already in just this paragraph. And I think that's a good demonstration there as well. It can be, and this is my version of ADHD. This is how I experience it. Like I said, people experience it in different ways. Different genders experience it in different ways as well. So it's my version of ADHD isn't what I think it is, but how it impacts me is different. How it impacts Nick and how it impacts other. It's very hyperactive. It's very, I'll jump between things, but I also will forget things very easily. And that can be, I'll put my phone down, and if it's not right there in front of me, it's disappeared. I've lost it for good. And it's not just a case of, I need to go and find it. I can't find that. Like, it's gone. I forget people's names. I'm forever terrible with names. I struggle without stimulation, so I have to have a form of stimulation. So you'll either see me picking at my arms or something like that. And that just helps me focus. And it's the same with in meetings. I will not look someone dead in the eye because that's not me focusing. That's not me paying attention. Me paying attention is me looking at that wall over there or looking outside, but listening to every single word that you're saying and acknowledging it. I'm not going to sit here and nod and say, yes, I understand what you're saying, because that's not me paying attention. That's me pretending to look like I'm paying attention, which is called masking. I'm going to sit here and probably fiddle, like say, with a pen or something like that, click it away. But then I've heard everything you've said and I've understood it, and I'll come back and react on it and challenge on it. So ADHD it's the missing of the dopamine. It's the lack of dopamine in my brain. It's like a bunch of squirrels up there running around, all trying to get that attention, all trying to look at something else and get the attention of something else. So there'll be a car outside and I'll notice that car before I've heard someone talking next to me. So I've had that, and it's chaos. But it's wonderful chaos at the same time. And I wouldn't change it for anything, because it's how I've learned, it's how I've adapted, how I've grown up. And I've fully embraced myself. There have been challenges in the past and times in the past where I've struggled with it. I think it's, sometimes I think it's wonderful. Sometimes it's a pain in the rear. But yeah, I've really very much embraced it. And hopefully that wasn't too much of a chaotic explanation of what it is. And
I just love visual metaphors, and I can't get that image out of my head of those squirrels running around in
a lot of them.
Yeah, so I think that's the image I'm going to keep with me from this episode. So thank you for sharing that. And Nick, I'd love to hear from you in terms of your experiences, and I guess if you could relate that to the world of business analysis and tech, like as a listener, as a tech professional, what are some of the things I should be aware of in meetings and in the way I engage with my audience who are made up of neurodiverse people?
Absolutely. So I can call on my own experiences from ADHD, so you can get your hyperactive and your inattentive side, or your combined, which I am combined. But again, as Paul touched on, everybody kind of experiences neurodivergent conditions differently, and the term neurodiverse pulls on everybody's experiences. So whether you've had trauma, whether you've got a neurodiverse condition that is diagnosed or not, everybody sees things differently. So it's just being aware of your surroundings. So if you're in an office and it's got a ridiculously bright light and somebody's really struggling to pay attention, it could be that they just really don't like that bright light. So for example, when I first joined my team, I said, by the way, I carry a hat on me at all times because I hate bright lights and they give me migraines because I just get really oversensitive to them. So it's just, and I've had to just explain that I'm not just walking around in a baseball cap. I just really don't like the lights. And it's just being open to people being themselves and being comfortable. So if they need a fidget toy, if they have to do something with the hands, if they start clicking a pen and it's really bugging you, maybe try redirect their attention, give them something else to fiddle with. So I'm currently fiddling with a wire tie thing just to give my hands something to do. So you could redirect their energy to something that is less distracting for yourself, maybe. And it's also just being aware that everybody has good days and bad days, whether you've had trauma, whether you've got a neurodiverse condition or not. Everybody has their own brain mental health. So it's making sure that if somebody has snapped at you out of the blue or is reacting to something negatively when they wouldn't normally, just checking in with them and making sure that everything's okay. Have they understood properly? Do they want to take the information away and review it? I find it as a business analyst, having that experience really helps, because obviously you talk to stakeholders all day, every day, and you deal with a wide range of people. So you can understand that everybody's going to come from a different angle and perspective on things. And sometimes it could just be that they're not confident enough to speak up, or they are coming from a defensive place because they really like that project and they don't want you to change it. So yeah, it's just being aware and thinking outside of your own bubble that maybe the way that they're reacting is not personal to me. It's just because they've had a bad evening, or they just haven't had the coffee this morning or something. Paul, I don't know if you want to build on that anymore.
No, I think an interesting point you said about there as well, them reacting in how you expect. So with a lot of neurodiverse, sorry, I get them mixed up all the time, and I should be well adverse in this, but it's a morning, so I'm going to play it off with lack of coffee. So one thing what's quite common is no one just has one condition, because they're built from how your brain is structured and developed. It's very difficult to have one. You're not 100% ADHD. Maybe 100% ADHD with a little bit of autism, or I have BPD as well. Anyway, so you're going to have variances, but they may not be strong enough to get a diagnosis. But with things like autism, you can become non-verbal quite quickly, especially in a stressful environment. Not everyone will do. It's not that everyone who has autism will become non-verbal, but it's quite common. And I think if you look at that example, when, let's say, someone's not reacting in a certain way and you just want them to respond to you, just want something and you're putting a bit of pressure on to get a response. And that little bit of pressure is putting a bit more stress, and that little bit more stress is making them become more nonverbal. And becoming more nonverbal, they're not reacting of how you want them to react, so you put more pressure on to get more of a response. And next thing you know, this person's full on lockdown because you've put enough pressure onto them that they just to get a response. And pressure might not be screaming or yelling at somebody, but pressing for a response could be enough, because you're giving them that stress. And we all know we have different types of stress. We have work stress, we have life stress, we have stress can be not knowing what the answer is right now and puts you in a stressful environment, puts you in a stressful situation. It's this stress that pushes them into that nonverbal. Next thing you know, communication's broken down. No one knows what's happening and everyone's struggling, and it's not going how you want it to go. So I think just touching on what Nick's saying there, like sometimes it's actually the absence of communication because of lack of communication.
So I'm going to throw this question out to both of you, and I'll let you both ponder, and we'll see who wants to answer first. But I always find the journey of preparing for a talk, either at a conference or it could be even a talk at work, it's a bit of a journey. And what we often set out with isn't what we end up with at the end, because we discover lots of things along the way. And I think part of the joy of preparing for a public speaking event is that experience of doing the research and finding out new stuff. So what has been a surprising thing that you've learned as part of your prep for this talk? It doesn't have to be just this talk. Maybe it's a previous talk as well. Like something that you discovered along the way and thought, wow, I had no idea about that myself.
Are you okay if I jump in and take that one?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to talk about, I know it's not about the talk that's upcoming, but the last one that we did, this is almost an extension of it. But for the previous one that we did, I think it was last year, we were both BA of the Year finalists. Was it last year or the year before?
Last year.
I think I was a BA of the Year finalist the year before, and you came with me. And I remember walking around the conference, and neurodiversity was something that was very big in my life at the time and Paul's life. And I remember walking around and talking about it, and there was a lot of people turned around and said, I have absolutely no idea what that is. What do you mean when you say neurodiversity? And I think that's where the whole kind of conference talk idea came from, and that's why we decided to do that first presentation. And then as we developed the idea, we actually attended a couple of talks on what it means to be neurodivergent and get other people's ideas. So we actually got out into the community to try and gather more opinions and talk about different people's experiences and look more into the science behind it. So I think it was yourself, Paul, and you did a little bit more research about synapse pruning and the actual brain science, which was so interesting. And yeah, it's just really good. You build in your own knowledge base, because you go in, you have a talk idea, you say, yes, I know everything about this, I can't wait. And then you actually start going through it, you get more opinions, more reviews, and you're actually, this can be improved massively. And that's what we're doing with this one currently as well. We've had a few opinions, we've had a couple of people review it, and yeah, it's very exciting actually. I love the process of it. I'll pass on to Paul now.
No, I think I was going to say a similar thing, and I think that's so. When you come up with the idea of a presentation or of a talk, there's months between then and coming to life. And as BAs, we all know. Well, I appreciate not everyone maybe BAs listen to this, but as BAs, we know you never stop learning. You're never going to stop learning, and there's always something new. And especially in communication, we've worked a lot on our communication over the last year. And really knuckle down how to communicate, how to embrace our brains and how communication works for us. And then something comes along and you're like, oh, I didn't know that. It's like, oh, well, God, that changes a few things. You're forever learning, but because the time between getting the idea and preparing for it and then it coming to a final piece, so much can happen in that time that you have to evolve and you have to adapt. And that can be on a personal level as well. Actually, thought we're pretty good at communication, then realized actually there's a lot more improvements that we can make. And that's perfectly fine. Every day is a learning day, and that's not a bad thing. We should always be learning. We should never stop developing and growing ourselves. But it also as well for people who are doing conference talks on other subjects or technology, just look at AI, how fast AI is growing and developing. You can look how fast tools are being built, how methodologies are changing. Everything changes so rapidly. So you have to build that into your preparation as well. You can't just go to a talk and think, yes, this is the final product when I've got the idea. This answer is going to be the same answer in half a year's time, because 100% will not be the same answer, apart from taxes. That's pretty much constant. But but yeah, so I think that's the other thing as well, is it's always adapting, it's always growing. And that's something which there's even moments where I thought that I had got my communication down to a T. In certain instances, I very realized I hadn't. And again, through understanding and my own research and the talk that we're doing has helped that a lot.
Thanks both. That's been really educational for me as well. And I love those experiences. As you mentioned, it's this process of discovery, and you think you've nailed it, and then all of a sudden you discover something else, and then it opens up a whole new, I won't say can of worms, but like a whole new pot of gold, and then you start to investigate that. So that's awesome. And I'm going to finish off with my favorite question, which I didn't give you any warning on, but if you've ever heard any other episodes, you will know. So Nick, first of all to you, if I could give you any superpower to abolish something in the world of work, and it could be a fun thing or a serious thing, what would that be?
You can, if I pass that to Paul first, he looks like he's going to explode with an answer.
I love this. This is why you have two people, right? You can pass the buck whenever, right? There you go, Paul. You've been volunteered.
I'm going to say emails. If I can abolish anything, it's got to be emails. And the reason for that is pure, I'm going to see one reason. I'm going to destroy emails and just leave the room. I very much prefer Teams or Zoom or Slack or whatever communication platform you use. I very much prefer that instant messaging, because it's there in front of me. I can react to it straight away. Whereas Outlook notifications, they pop up. You get 1,010,000 for all different invites for company information and stuff like this. But there's a lot that comes through, so you have to filter out quite a lot. And you can have rules, you can have folder structures, and you have all that good stuff. However, you still got to go looking. And you don't know what's important to you because you can't just quickly, easily see. So I'm very much a fan of instant messaging and fan of Teams. And if you need to get my attention, send it on Teams. If you need to say something formally, send it on email. Something that needs to be documented, send on email. But send me a Teams to tell me you send that email, because I know that it's there. And I'm not going to do that struggle of trying to work out what is important and what is not, because everyone gets 1,010,000 emails a day. So if I was going to do it, I would just get rid of it and say nothing's that important that it has to be sent on an email and it can't be sent on the Teams. Especially with tracking and messages these days, it's the same thing. It just one's formal with a signature on the bottom, the other one isn't. And signatures as well, that's probably another thing. If I could kill off a second thing, massive company email signatures, Hiscox isn't too bad. So, but there are some which you see in the past and they're about 4 pages long, and good Lord, no, get rid of those.
Oh, brilliant. I love that one. And I think it does come back to the point of, wouldn't it be good if we understood our communication preferences, because we're all different. And for many of us, Teams is really effective. No wonder when BAs are trying to engage with their stakeholders, they're not getting those responses back because they keep bombarding people with emails, and that person probably doesn't respond well to email. So maybe take a different approach. So really good one. Thank you so much. And Nick, what about yourself?
I think I'm going to take a little bit more of a serious approach, but it's of the same vein. So it's not having the room to state your own needs and justify your own needs. So it ties into that whole preference thing. Everybody works differently. So look, I'm not speaking from a current personal experience. I'm quite lucky, but you hear stories about people who are in a work environment and they're told you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way, and there's never any why, there's never any understanding behind it. You just have to do it, and that's the expected. And I think that's something that I would abolish, because everybody works in a different way. So if I am given a set of instructions and I don't understand it, I'll say, okay, so what exactly do you need from me? When do you need it by? And why? Because that's how my brain works. And I think it's lovely to have the freedom to state that's what I need. So whenever anybody gives me a piece of information or instructions and I don't understand, I will just say, can you come back with that information? And then I will get on with it absolutely fine. But I think that you hear stories about a few people who don't have that freedom to say it, and it just creates a really negative work environment for everybody. So I think if I was to abolish something in the world of work, you have to allow people to be who they are, because otherwise you're not creating any psychological safety. You're not allowing people to be their best selves, if that makes sense.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for taking us down that serious route as well.
It's a good serious end.
No, 100%. And hey, look, I really appreciate your time today. I think you guys have done a great job of lifting the lid on some of these concepts and terms that are often a little bit dark for certain people. And like myself included, I mentioned at the start, I would love to be more aware. And so these conversations really help with that. So thank you for that. And good luck for the talk. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. I will make every attempt to be there, and I'll be in the back cheering you guys on. I promise I will be paying attention. And I can't wait. So thank you so much to the two of you today.
Thank you for your time, Paddy.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.